So for this one, I wanted to test a different method. I believe you don't have to do all three of them. That's not, you could pick one of them. And I think I am going to stick to that. Just pick the one. Although it's so easy, it's an easy composition. Why not stick with the three? But what I wanted to do is this. If you have Vine charcoal, one easy way is to just cover your paper. So what is the drawing method here? It's going to be a little bit of, mostly focused on negative space, I would say. That's going to be where I'm headed with this. But subtracting. So bringing the light. And obviously we have a good subject for that. So this is one way. You're just going to add Vine charcoal. Actually, a great way because you could gesture. And even have a bit of some of the background, some of the things you see in there. So how you tone your paper is what it's called. Becomes also a great element of part of the drawing. Now I'm using a little bit of tissue paper because this could take one or two. And notice that I could soften it up. Now there are different types of charcoals, different types of vine. Vine charcoal, the softest charcoal you can use, is going to be best because depending on the hardness of some of these charcoals, it'll be hard to lift. And what you want is something, in this case, using kneaded eraser. And any type of eraser you use for this should be okay to play with. I'm going to actually draw it back from gray as I play. So notice what happens to the key here is going to be that. It's going to be, how am I seeing? What is my thought process? Am I going, when I say negative space, what is my starting point? What is my shape? So it's analyzing the way you move through an image. How are you selecting and applying the pointers, the decision making for these methods? Now you begin to see here how it's lifting. And eventually I'll come back. So it's a method of add and subtract. And well, that doesn't make any sense because now you're just drawing. But you see what I do here. If I added more, well, you're just drawing around where you edited out the light, basically. And how is that going to work? Well, that's what we're trying to expand, techniques. So this is one way. Another that I always recommend, and it's amazing, it's this charcoal, pure powdered charcoal. And so you just add a little bit, and I'm saying just a tap. That should be more than enough. Now, how could you get this? I mean, they sell small little batches, small little containers. This is a big one for classroom use. It would last you a whole lifetime, really, unless you do it daily and large. Making your own. So from your shavings or just using... Well, I just thought about that. What type of graphite? Is it a soft graphite? Like a 2B or 4B? It's what it looks like. Maybe even 6B. As you sharpen your pencil, that which you're sharpening off would be this, basically. And I'm just, once again, applying it softly with the tissue paper, rubbing it without much pressure. It does get a little bit messy, but you notice the nice qualities as I apply a little bit of gesture as well to the rubbing of it. And I would really want this to stay. Isn't that beautiful? Some of these shifts in value. So this is a really nice way to actually see your drawing. And here we go. Using just a kneaded eraser for now, I'm going to just dive in. Applying. It's a combination. It's not just negative space, because I'm seeing the negative space, but I'm actually erasing, bringing out the positive. Hope that makes sense. It'll make sense in just a second when you see how I navigate, how I go through this. But notice the difference now with the level of darkness that I added, the saturation with that charcoal, the tone paper. Can't breathe too hard on it because it just blows away. So this may take just a little bit of experimenting with how I turn, twist my tool, in this case kneaded eraser, and I'm having to bend and reshape every couple of strokes. So I would say 2, 3, 4 taps. I'm tapping, not rubbing. But my goodness, am I seeing negative space like I've never seen it before. And it is one way to really, really sharpen your skill. Now, wait a minute. What if, instead of just erasing a silhouette of it, am I supposed to also see the values and the shifting values inside the shape? Well, now we're really going a lot deeper. Now we're drawing negative space and I'm beginning to see value. So how do I handle that? Instead of just trying to do a contour. So for example here where we would have the eye, I work around it. And what kind of technique, what kind of method serves me best to try to capture both of those things? The shape and some of the value shifts inside my subject. It's a tricky switch in the mind as you're developing negative space to switch back in. But that's the whole idea, really understanding how it's working for you. And I know it's taken a while, but now you begin to see it here. And sometimes just the first few steps are crucial to begin to set you up. And once you see stage 1, it all of a sudden starts, just everything falls into place a lot easier as well. And it's a really interesting way of dealing with negative space that we may not be used to because it seems backwards. And how often do we do this? Now, if this were your method that, oh my goodness, I love how this looks, I'm going to do it more often, you are really going to push this technique. It will force you eventually to break it down, to come up with those, I talk about strategies, where you're going to have to see it, plan it before you even start. So I'm kind of guessing my way through right now. That's what it feels like. Like, okay, what happens after this mark? Not a lot of planning ahead, really. I'm just working my way through. You'll notice soon that my composition is going to be way off because it just got a little bit bigger, so I'm going to run out of space down here and maybe even all the way back here. So you'll see what my starting point was. It should have been up here. That's one of the things I missed. When I thought I was going to introduce, actually go for all three subjects, I misplaced. And the fact that that happens, so far, it would be the biggest lesson about this study, or from this study that I would take away, about composition and how to set yourself up from the very beginning, how to think about that first mark. So I'm beginning to also think about, as I get more and more comfortable with my overall contour, my silhouette, I begin to explore a little more inside the subject. So some of these markings that could, notice I could begin to kind of feather my gesture. And they actually look like overlapping feathers here. I like that look. Give you a bit of a closer look. So that's what it looks like here. And shaping it. The different rubbing or tapping motion. Longer or shorter, wider strokes. Actually give you really nice, good qualities here. So I'm thinking way ahead also at fixative and how some of these layers could be really, really preserved and then maybe layered. Because it does not have to be all done in one. Kind of like a little ghost duck look. I mentioned we could go back into it. With some gestures, some marks of charcoal. But I want to take this as far as I can with just this method, this technique. The idea is to play. So you see, when I get tight in the mind, when I begin to get a little too... Sometimes I think it's the talking. When you deal with negative space, you really have to be in the right brain. And talking your way through it, it's not good. So I felt like I struggled a little bit. Is that a good excuse for me not doing my composition like I should? Well, it's more about overall. See, I'm seeing this S shape here. And some of the angles that are going to make my pigeon look a little more like a duck. It's all, I think it's all in the, right here in this chest area. I say chest, the breast here. There we go. I like how these feathers worked out. Missed my composition here, a little bit of the feet. Before I do any of the gestures or markings, I'm actually going to play a little extra with the background here. Just add that second figure here, second duck. Try to do it a little lighter. So the way I usually draw negative space, the way I work my way through negative, it's very linear. And this is forcing me to see it's been a while since I've done this, so really interesting. Really, really something I wanna maybe revisit, play a little more with. It could be very beneficial. Sometimes you find these interesting, they make you they stumble, so they make you stumble a little. And you want to revisit, refine, and understand what is it about the thought process of how you approach drawing that is making it easier or harder. And gain a better understanding that then serves you, becomes a strength. So I'm trying to purposefully keep this one a little bit grayer, so it doesn't take too much attention away from this brightness here. And just kind of hinting at it. There we go. It almost makes me want to do the third one now. And why not? We have two beautiful negative spaces to deal with here. Missed this one a little bit. There we go. It's amazing how you begin to discover how you see, what you choose to see, and most importantly, what you're missing, what you're not seeing, or how you're not being able to see it, or why you struggle with seeing some of the things that will eventually become your absolute strengths. Negative space is such a simple one. Not getting a good vibe from this one here, just the shape of it. Really very small curves and shifts in these angles. There we go. So again, here we are. Looking once more at negative space, keeping it really light. My touch is super light pressure, barely lifting any. I want to just hint at it. But my focus is mostly on this negative space shape here. And I'm talking about this. So the technique, the method I'm using to see it and also to bring it about. The way I hold this, shape this kneaded eraser has a lot to do with it, with how it's going to work. Seeing bigger shapes, easier to read. coming right down into our second. There we are. So I got the general feel of it, basic shape. Some of the angles right in here where I started early on. Could have done a little bit better, a little bit smoother, not so linear. And how do we push the gesture just a little bit further? Keep it interesting. Lots of value to play with. And once again, just trying to hint at it. Barely any detail, just more of that shift in value here and there. There we are. Just hinting at it. My focus wants to stay here. So let's go ahead and finish it up. This is risky. Bringing back charcoal. What you don't want to do is just outline and overpower this kind of work. But some areas, it just needs a touch. Obviously, you'll see one here where you see a little bit of definition and making some measurements. A little bit of that smile. And it's really managing risk here. What do I mean by that? How much is any bit could be too much because of the contrast. So really minimizing and really understanding what kind of mark making and how many of them are going to do the job here. Otherwise your drawing becomes something else very quickly, and it's already happening. I need to find ways to maybe smooth this out a little bit. One way I could do that, maybe with the brush. This is not, I would use a smaller brush. So as we did earlier, smoothing some of this sharper, darker line. And play with it back and forth, bringing back more light, sharpening that contrast again. So that would be my application of the technique. And it becomes really rich, really fast. What do I mean by rich? It just, look at the amount of volume that it created here. It almost captures that expression, the personality, really very quickly. And just looking for the right angle. Here I'll use a paper blender. And a little more mark making. Have some of that curvature, you know, that kind of brow, feathery brow motion here. The concave and convex patterns. Some of the shadow inside. I think that's what it was bothering me here. Just not enough shift of values once I worked in that negative space. There was just not enough, because they're so soft, and they're obviously on white, so the level of gray there is really minimal. But there we are. All the others, I could live with that. Just a little bit of kind of eyelash to it. There we are. Do we need one more? Just a tiny bit. Contrast. Great way to play. Great way to play. And really avoiding that urge to get carried away with heavier line, sharper line. Because you could see what it does, for example, here. With just a few marks. And maybe a little bit of back and forth. Bringing light back in. That actually looks pretty good. Just that level of contrast at the edge. A little bit of grounding of the image. Some of it missing down here. But again, goes to that composition issue that I had early on. Very loose marks, just to enhance the edges of some of these value changes in the feathers, not so much the feathers themselves.